Okay, I know that people are going to ask about the debate and how I see it and what's going to happen moving forward. So here it is. First, before we get started about what happened with Trump or what happened with Biden or any of my analysis, let me lay my cards on the table and tell you this. I am a conservative Republican. I am not supporting Trump. In fact, on my YouTube channel, I put this. I said, I'm a Reagan Republican who fully supports Ukraine. I'm a conservative without a candidate to vote for in November. And I've been saying that for a long time. I can't vote for Trump. I think he's bad both for Ukraine and for the party and also probably the country. I think MAGA is the wrong direction. We're heading the wrong direction as Republicans with MAGA. We need to go a different direction, back to a conservative rather than a populist direction. At the same time, I've also said I can't vote for Biden. I have looked at Biden. When he was first elected, he says, I'm the president of all Americans. And then there was nothing that he did for the first entire 2 years that I agreed with politically. However, he has been a strong supporter of Ukraine, and I appreciate him for that, even though I think he came to it slowly and may have even egged Putin on in some slight ways along the way by sending mixed signals, which he hasn't done. He hasn't repeated that mistake with China and Taiwan, which I appreciate him for, and I give him props where I can. So that's where I come from, where I'm not a Biden supporter, but I'm not trying to knock him down. I'm not a Trump supporter, and I have no candidate to vote for. And by the way, I know some people will criticize me and say, well, he's going to both sides this and say he's going to make MAGA talking points. Trying to analyze what's going on is not giving talking points and saying this side's equally to that. I do this with Russian propaganda as well. I say, this is what they say. Why did they say that? What are we? But I'm not both siding that. So let's get that off the table as well. I have a Ronald Reagan, a real revolutionary shirt. It says, the Reagan Revolution lives. My cat is named Reagan. This is where I come from. So with that being said, and knowing that I'm not supporting Trump, and by the way, I've said for a long time, I can't support Trump, but I can't support Biden. If you were a Democrat who fully supported Biden last night as you watched this, you might now understand where I'm coming from. Because after you watched Biden's performance, did you go, oh, and say, I'm not sure that I can support Biden, but I can't support Trump? Welcome to my world. Okay, I'm going to show you a dozen clips here, and just little clips to help you understand what happened. So here's first Biden and his decline. Let's look at this. I've timed these about right where they're supposed to be. So is he looking healthy to you?
We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
He was saved by the bell on that one, right? I mean, that wasn't a good look. Now, in this next clip, he's going to be talking about abortion. And just hear what he has to say about it. It's not about the policy. It's about what he actually says. And yeah, okay, here we go.
Everybody wanted it brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back. And many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
Okay, Trump looks like he looked in the last election in the same kind of debate. He's still doing whatever he's doing, and he just looks like Trump. Look at Biden.
Staying on the topic of abortion, President Biden.
And listen to Biden.
7 states, I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the...
Whoa. A trimester, now I have kids, so I know that a trimester is like the first 3 months, the second 3 months, the third 3 months. Let's go back and hear what he had to say about trimesters.
3 trimesters. First time is between the woman and the doctor.
Woman
Second
and a
time is
doctor.
between the doctor and an extreme situation. The
Doctor in
third time
extreme
is
situation.
between the doctor, between the woman and the state.
Woman
The
in the
idea
state.
that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous.
Like he just confused the question. It wasn't a good look. And I'm not trying to make him look bad. I'm just saying, ugh, this is not a good look. Okay, next. He's talking about Ukraine here. So let's listen very carefully about this.
Let's move to the topic of foreign policy. I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its third year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand
He's going back to a previous bit about this. So they do this in debates often, and they shouldn't do this, but that's what's going on here.
this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander-in-chief, if that's what you call him, that we've ever had.
Okay, this is a really bad look for Joe, and that's going to be replayed in commercial after commercial, like the staring off into space kind of things, whether he was doing that or just thinking, the optics look terrible. But let's hear what Trump has to say about Ukraine.
They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information.
Get on with
As
it.
far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine.
Okay, this is a common talking point, and I'm saying what the right sees when they hear this. I'm not saying it's correct. I'm not saying anything else along those lines, but this is a common talking point where a lot of Republicans think, yeah, this whole thing with Ukraine would never have happened except for Biden showing this weakness in the way that he got out of Afghanistan. Rightly or wrongly, they believe that. So I'm showing you what they say, and he's repeating that kind of thing, but he's not actually answering the question just yet.
A lot of people are dead right now, much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, that when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned. And so he's got no love lost, but he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said,
again, this is resonating with those on the right. It's probably not moving anybody on the left, but it's the common talking point. But he still has yet to answer the question.
you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine. Never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything, no money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place.
So he still hasn't answered the question yet. He's just going back to, it never would have happened on my watch, but this guy, that's what happened. That's what got us into this.
The whole world is blowing up under him.
President
Still didn't
Biden?
answer the question.
Never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. Look, the fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, not when he was president. They attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't.
Now, Joe Biden's actually making a decent point here, But the way that he's making it is not nearly as forceful as what Trump was doing. He was kind of talking like this, right? And that's unfortunate because it's taking away from the oomph, the power of what he has to say.
Do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want and do whatever you want. And that
this guy told Trump, what's he talking about? Now we all misspeak. I do it, you do it, but like this is high stakes here.
It's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in.
Now he didn't make that comment about, Putin can do whatever he wants until a few months ago. This had nothing to do with when he was in his term. Like what? In fact, it was Joe Biden as vice president in 2014 when Russia invaded Ukraine. So, okay. But nonetheless, it's just not looking that good so far. But
listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I never said.
I don't think that Biden really scored here, but Trump's about to make it worse. Just listen.
For 1 minute, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine?
No.
Okay, that's the strongest thing. He said, no, they're not acceptable. That's the strongest thing that Trump has said so far. Just a few days ago, a plan came out with two of his former general advisors, like former generals who were advisors to the Trump administration, saying, here's Trump's peace plan. It is bring Ukraine to the table and say, if you don't come to the table, we're not going to give you any more weapons. Bring Russia to the table by saying, if you don't come to the table, we're going to give Ukraine all the weapons. Terrible plan, but that's where we are right now. But he just said, no, that's not acceptable. But that's the strongest thing that he's going to say, and it's not terribly strong.
Not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And
now,
I'm not.
That's not true, but everything that Trump says, if you watch him carefully, he says hyperbolically, this is the best, this is the greatest, he's the worst, he's the terriblest, that kind of thing. So, yeah, so he's continuing to double down on that narrative, and that's absolutely not good for Ukraine. So, like, if you're thinking, well, Trump might be better for Ukraine, I don't think he is. I really don't. Now, he could surprise us, but I wouldn't bet on it by any means. I think he's probably the worst candidate for Ukraine, at least from what we can see at this point.
Not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled.
He really can. And I'll show you an article in another upcoming video about exactly why he can't do that. There was a great video that just came out not too long ago, an economist who was explaining why that just will not work. And I'll get to that in a few days.
People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
No, I don't think that's even possible. Okay, let's go to Biden about Ukraine.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is a guy who wants to get out of NATO. Are you going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that our strength lies in our alliances as well. It may be a big ocean, but we're ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe? What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine, and then move on to Poland and other places.
Biden is right, 100%. He's 1,000% right, but he's so soft-spoken about it that it's really hard to really like feel what he's saying, and it's the optics are just terrible. But he's right.
You see what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has ever been able to be contained just to Europe.
President Trump, just to follow up, would you support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see, but before we do that, the problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade.
This is another Trumpian talking point. So old school conservatives like me are like, spend the money. What would Reagan do? Then MAGA Republicans, who tend to be populist, tend to go down this Trumpian kind of path about, well, Europe, they're not ponying up their money and they need to do that. And I told them, and right, here we go.
Trade deals with the European nations. Because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, they don't want anything that we have, but we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this, I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question, would you guard us against Russia? At a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time. And I said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next months. But
okay, so if you're on the left side of the spectrum, you might not have heard this as much as I have, because on the right side of the spectrum, this is a very common thing. Trump was the one that actually helped NATO get up to the 2% for those that were doing the 2%. And he really, I know on the left, you think Trump is anti-NATO. On the right, they think, well, he's making them pay their fair share. That's the difference in perspective here. And he made that talking point that's going to resonate with the right. And of course, those on the left aren't going to buy that at all. And I understand that. I'm just trying to explain how it's going to be heard or understood. But that's where Trump is. Now they just descend into this immature kind of well, my golf handicap is this. Well, my golf handicap is that. You're talking about a presidential debate. You're supposed to be talking about substance, not this schoolyard one-upmanship. It just gets ugly.
have wood that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way, and I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I was 25, 30 years ago.
Biden's face is not helping himself either. He's looking like not quite with it. And okay.
Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced them. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one. And one of them said they've never seen anybody ace him.
Thank you. President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 235 pounds. Well, you said 6'4", 200. Well, anyway, that's what you're. Anyway.
So that was a poor attempt at a joke that kind of didn't land, and it's just not making him look good. And
just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag.
What on earth are you guys doing? Talking about playing your golf handicap? What? Okay, now the topic is going to be World War III and why Trump ran and all kinds of weird stuff here just for a moment.
Election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political opponent because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president.
That was a very Trumpian talking point, that the indictments, the felony, it's all political stuff, and that's going to resonate with the MAGA crowd, and it's not going to resonate at all with the left, and generally it's shaken out not to resonate at all with independents.
I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. But the only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation right now. We're a seriously failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's...
Okay, so that's wrong. We are actually more likely to move toward World War III by putting our heads in the sand and doing nothing. But that is resonating with MAGA. It's not resonating with Republicans like me who support Ukraine, because we remember Ronald Reagan's peace through strength. It's different, right? So, but that talking point is going to light up his MAGA base, and I think it's just exactly wrong. Okay, last little clip from the debate, and that is they're talking about just a non-answer on Ukraine. So here we are.
Not me, it's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because of our own safety as a state. Mm-hmm. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
President Trump,
right.
as I come back to you.
He's getting it. He's understanding, he's articulating it right. But he was articulating it like this. He was barely talking voice. So it's a bad look with the right words on this topic. Now, just another minute or so of this, and then we'll talk about analysis.
Question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Just to finish what he said, if I might, Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew.
What he's saying, took a lot of land from Bush. That's the Georgia invasion, happened under George W. Bush's watch. The Ukraine invasion in 2014 happened under Obama Biden. And so that's what he's comparing himself to.
Not to do it. He's not going to play games with me. He knew that. I got along with him very well, but he knew not to play games. He took nothing from me. But now he's going to...
I know this is going to be almost nonsensical to those on the left, because they think that Trump is just Putin's pawn, just being maneuvered by him. But on the right, those MAGA crowd are feeling what he's saying, that, Putin's not going to do anything to me. I'm going to, right? That is how they see it. And just like the left sees it as that he's Putin's, a Manchurian candidate.
Take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started, ever.
Here we go back again with a non-answer.
And he's going to take Ukraine. And, you asked me a question before, would you do this? He's got us in such a bad position right now with Ukraine and Russia, because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old.
And he's just repeating Russian talking points here. I can't fathom who's advising him, that is telling him to say things like, Ukraine's just running out of people and they can't win. Like, what happened to the Republican Party?
Because of him and stupid decisions, Russia would have never attacked if I were president.
Trump, the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted.
Okay, so that's where we're going to stop with those clips about the debate itself. Now let's watch them just leaving the debate stage. Jill comes to retrieve Joe and give him a hug. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But Trump's walking off, and he's just walking. Maybe he's a little old. Okay, he is old, right? But Joe, oh my gosh. He's walking down the stairs like one step at a time, one foot, next foot, one foot, next foot. It was just, that was almost a metaphor for what has happened in that debate. Okay, now let's compare notes between Joe Biden and Paul Ryan. And I just went to a half-hour mark, like just to randomly pick a place and see how Joe Biden was then.
Constituents who are applying for grants.
By the way, the person talking is Paul Ryan. He's the former Speaker of the House. He was the vice presidential candidate with Mitt Romney when Mitt Romney ran against Obama. So here we are, Paul Ryan and Joe Biden.
Well, we do that for all constituents who are.
Well, I
Look at
love
Joe.
that. I love that. This is such a bad program, and he writes me a letter saying, writes the Department of Energy a letter saying, the reason we need this stimulus, it will create growth and jobs. His words. And now he's sitting here looking at me. And by the way, that program, again, investigated. What the Congress said was it was a model. Less than 0.4% waste or fraud in the program. And all this talk about cronyism. They investigated, did not find one single piece of evidence. I wish.
Okay, look at the difference between Joe Biden in his prime and Joe Biden right now, and that's where we are, and that's why CNN and MSNBC, because I flipped between Fox and CNN and MSNBC last night, and they were all on the same page about, wow, that was a bad look for Joe Biden. He had a very bad night. It reminded me of the 96 election where the Republicans put up this man, his name is Bob Dole. Bob Dole was a long-standing Republican senator. He was, a luminary within the party, but he was really not the future. But because he's been around long enough, we're like, oh, okay, I guess Dole, and lost the election to Bill Clinton. Shouldn't have put up Dole. Okay, I put this out on my community tab yesterday. If our presidential candidates were plums, that's where they are. I mean, that's just the reality. But it's working against Biden far more than it's working against Trump, I think. I also put this out. If you're watching the debate right now, how is Biden looking? I'm not asking if you want him to win, but does he look like he's in command of himself and the facts? So basically, there's 4 points, and then 40% just wanted to see. So there's a pro-Biden, a pro-Trump, and then 2 that are kind of in the middle. He looks presidential as any president had. About 8% said that. He looks presidential, not dominant. He doesn't look as in command as Trump, 5%. And then 34% said he looks a bit lost and clearly slow. Look, there's 34% here to 8% there. I mean, that's, I think, pretty telling. And the crowd that watches my channel is more left-leaning than right-leaning. Now, before the debate, I asked this: who do you think will poll as winning the U.S. presidential debate tonight? 63% said Biden and 37% said Trump. That was before the debate. During the debate, it changed significantly. On Twitter, I put out a few things yesterday as well. Can we all just get a do-over on our candidates? Theoretically, that's possible. If either candidate decided to bow out and say, you know what, I know you voted for me in the primary, I'm actually going to not run, they could bow out, and then the convention would actually have to figure out how to nominate a new candidate. But it's possible. It's unlikely. Trump certainly wouldn't do that. I don't think his ego would let him. And Biden, that could happen, but it's unlikely. How do you unify the perspective of Fox, CNN, and MSNBC? Joe Biden just did it. All 3 were somewhat shocked, and that's by Biden's performance and how old he looked. But I think Vlad Vexler captured it perfectly, and I said so much here in this tweet. Biden with cognitive decline versus Trump with post-truth deception. I think that's where we are. Honestly, I think that's right, and it's terrible that this is the choice that we have right now. I don't think this debate was make or break about the election, but it sure didn't help Joe Biden. And I think it only helped Trump in the minds of those who are on the fence. But that's just my perspective. I could be completely wrong, and I'd like to hear what you have to say. After watching that, just those highlights that I showed you, and I wasn't cherry picking it to make one side look good or bad, but just to show you what was going on during the debate. So what do you think? Put it in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and tell me what you're thinking now. I'm particularly interested to know if you are all in behind Biden. Has anything changed for you? Or are you like me, like, I can't vote for him, but I really can't vote for him. Oh, what do I do? Okay, That's all that I have, my friends. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.